Welcome to Pleasant View's training on HIPAA, or the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act. This training will be a summary of what HIPAA is and then an overview of Pleasant View's policies and procedures. Beginning with some definitions and terminology. So what is HIPAA? It stands for the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act. This is a federal law. Who does it apply to? It applies to the majority of workers, most health insurance providers, and employers who sponsor or co-sponsor employee health insurance plans. So essentially, it covers anyone that works in the medical field or health and human services field or any type of health insurance company. What does it cover? It covers all individually identifiable health information held or transmitted by a covered entity in any form, whether that be electronic, paper, or oral. It is protected. PHI, or personal health information, that is essentially the information that is protected by HIPAA. Pleasant View's main PHI documentation are support records. Support records are defined as all documentation that addresses an individual's care and treatment at a minimum. ePHI stands for electronic personal health information. So that is any PHI that's stored or processed electronically. Some examples of PHI found at Pleasant View are progress notes or support logs, MARs, which are medication administration records, or ISP checklists. The definition of confidentiality is that confidentiality refers to personal information shared with an attorney, physician, therapist, or other individuals that generally cannot be divulged to third parties without the express consent of the client. A breach of confidentiality is defined in HIPAA as the acquisition, access, use, or disclosure of protected health information in a manner not permitted which compromises the security or privacy of the protected health information. There are two components of HIPAA, the first being the privacy rule. The privacy rule standards address the use and disclosure of individuals' health information called protected health information, or PHI. It also addresses standards for individuals' privacy rights to understand and control how their health information is used. So essentially what the privacy rule does is it addresses how individuals' health information is used and how it's disclosed, as well as how individuals are informed of their rights to privacy and how they have control over how their health information is used. The privacy rule protects all individually identifiable health information. Again, the privacy rules calls this information protected health information, or PHI. So individually identifiable health information includes demographic data that relates to the individual's past, present, or future physical or mental health or condition. So i.e. what diagnosis they have or diagnoses that they have. Also refers to the provision of healthcare to the individual. So what treatments are they receiving, what medications, what supports are being provided, as well as the past, present, or future payment for the provision of healthcare to the individual. So that would be, whether they're private pay, whether they're covered by insurance, what type of insurance they have. Also included in PHI is any information that identifies the individual or for which there is reasonable basis to believe it can be used to identify the individual. So their name, their address, their birth date, their social security number, that is all included under PHI as well. A central aspect of the privacy rule is the principle of minimum necessary use and disclosure. A covered entity must make reasonable efforts to use, disclose, and request only the minimum amount of protected health information needed to accomplish the intended purpose of the use, disclosure, or request. The second component of HIPAA is the security rule. The security standards for the protection of electronic protected health information establish a national set of security standards for protecting certain health information that is held or transferred in electronic form. So a major goal of the security rule is to protect the privacy of individuals' health information while allowing covered entities to adopt new technologies to improve the quality and efficiency of patient care. So essentially what the security rule does is it sets standards for providers to make sure that we are protecting individuals' PHI. The security rule requires covered entities to maintain reasonable and appropriate administrative, technical, and physical safeguards for protecting ePHI. These include ensuring the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of all PHI they create, receive, maintain, or transmit, identify and protect against reasonably anticipated threats to the security or integrity of the information, protect against reasonably anticipated impermissible uses or disclosures, and ensure compliance by our workforce. So what are some of the specific processes and procedures that Pleasant View has developed to maintain HIPAA? We do annual reviews of releases of information with individuals and their authorized representatives. So annually, we supply a notice of what our privacy practices are, and we also update the consent to exchange information at least annually and as needed. We also have policies and procedures drafted for record storage. These cover both digital and physical records. We have a protocol for disclosing information and safeguards for protection of PHI. We conduct annual HIPAA trainings for all employees. We have procedures in place to ensure exchange of information is done securely. Paper records are locked when not in use. Emails containing PHI must be encrypted. Examples of some types of email encryption services are Cisco, Virtru, and Barracuda. We do not use identifying information when emailing or texting. I.e., we would use initials instead of a person's full name. So John Doe would be JD, Mary Beth would be MB. When it comes to disclosure, information should only be released when the individual AR has given a written consent. When immediacy is a factor, informed verbal consent is acceptable in the moment, but should be followed up with a written form, i.e., if there's a medical emergency, as long as we get verbal consent and follow that up with written consent, we can provide the medical service. Only the amount of information needed is disclosed. Again, that's the minimum necessary, and only information can be shared with the relevant parties. For records management, each individual has their own service record. Individuals and their authorized representative have the right to access their records and dispute content. Individuals and/or their authorized representative must provide written consent for any release of information. So individual service records are individualized, and they are also legal documents. You should not be writing, the only name that needs to appear in an individual service record is their own. You should not be writing names of housemates or family members or staff members. All paper records are kept in secured location when not in use, so locked cabinets and/or offices. Then as far as ePHI, computers are equipped with individual passwords. Records are kept 6 years from the last date of service. So most recent 3 years are kept in the program of service. For the sake of space, additional years are stored in the regional center in Broadway. When services have been discontinued and 6 years have passed, records are then destroyed. For ePHI, electronic records are kept on the server. The server is accessible only by designated users with unique usernames and passwords. Passwords are changed every 90 days and are not to be shared with anyone else. All ePHI is stored on the server. ePHI should not be saved on a device hard drive, i.e. the C drive or a USB that isn't password protected. Computers and agency smartphones will be assigned to a specific individual or a specific workroom or specific program for use by authorized staff members only. Personal devices should not be used to transmit ePHI. For more information regarding our policies to keep ePHI secure, you can check the technology workbook, which is located on the server. So some of Pleasant View's guidelines to maintain confidentiality and follow all HIPAA standards. Employees shall ensure the confidentiality of any individual information obtained housed by Pleasant View. When exchanging information for the treatment or care plan of the individual, the following will be maintained and monitored. Any information exchanged within a program will be related to the individuals being served within the program. When information is exchanged, it will occur inside a closed room or well away from hearing range of others. This includes surrounding individuals. Information about individuals in one program will not be shared with staff in other programs, with the exception of programs working together to serve the individual, i.e. day support services. However, it's important to remember the minimum necessary standard. So, for example, if I'm working 7 to 3 in a residential program and somebody is picking up somebody for day supports, it may be relevant that I tell them, if an individual had a cold over the weekend or didn't eat their breakfast or seems to be more tired than usual, because that is probably relevant to the services that the day support will be providing for that day. And then on the flip side, if day support is bringing somebody back to their residential placement, they should let them know if there was any deviations from baseline, like if maybe the individual had experienced a seizure that day or if they were more tired than usual. Because again, that information may be relevant to the supports that are provided later for that individual. Individual information will not be in plain sight and needs to be kept in files, drawers, notebooks, etc. Computer screens will not be visible from windows or doors, so all the offices are set up so that somebody can look through the window to see what somebody is working on their computer. Each program will have file access sheets that need to be signed by every staff using those files. So every record for the individuals or every binder for the individual will have a file access sheet in the beginning of the book, and that needs to be signed before the DSP or the staff can access those records. Employees not involved in individual care, i.e. housekeeping or maintenance, will not be exposed to individual information, verbal or otherwise. Each individual has the right to access their own records and is able to disagree, or request to have information changed if they feel the information is inaccurate. Individuals will continue to sign the consent to exchange information forms annually. The individual will be aware of each exchange of information with outside agencies. The consent to exchange information form will cover fax, telephone, and email exchanges. So again, the consent to exchange form is completed annually with the individual and their substitute decision maker, and then it's also updated as needed. So it may need to be updated if an individual starts seeing a new medical provider, or perhaps they develop natural supports and they want us to be able to disclose information to that support person. Pleasant View will have internal HIPAA reviews to be conducted by the privacy officers. So speaking about some of the common violations of HIPAA, so some of the common confidentiality mistakes include casual conversation. So maybe talking in the community with somebody who knows an individual and giving them a medical update that you didn't mean to give. A lot of our individuals, or I would say just about all of our individuals, have relationships out in the community, and it's not uncommon to run into somebody when you're out in public and they want to know how Sally's doing or Joe is doing, and we can it's not a breach to give just a general, they're doing okay, but it would be a breach if we were to disclose identifying things like, oh, well, they've been experiencing kidney stones, or they have a new diagnosis of hypertension. That those would be breaches or violations. Unauthorized release of records, so releasing medical information to another provider before we've gotten informed consent or consent to exchange updated. On social media, posting something about an individual or posting a picture of an individual without making sure that you have the consent to do that. So employees who are in violation or found to have breached confidentiality will be subject to disciplinary actions within Pleasant View. These include, but are not limited to, just a retraining, written reprimand in your personnel file, or even termination. In addition to disciplinary actions within Pleasant View, you may find you are there's outside penalties as well. So our entity falls under civil penalties. These penalties are $100 per violation, up to $25,000 per person for each violation of HIPAA. In the last 5 years, HIPAA has fined up to $2.3 million to individual practices for careless handling of PHI, unauthorized disclosure of PHI, and impermissible disclosure of ePHI. In many, if not all of these cases, improper training of employees added to the catastrophic nature of these violations. So in summary, again, what is HIPAA? It's the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act. It's a federal law that applies to all health service providers and their contractors created to protect private health information. Documentation completed at PVI falls under HIPAA law. Violations or breaches in confidentiality may result in fines. Pleasant View has policies, protocols, and practices in place to ensure HIPAA compliance. Every employee at PVI is responsible for maintaining HIPAA compliance. Should you have questions regarding HIPAA, please reach out to your supervisor, or you can reach out to your social worker or the Director of Program Integrity. Thank you.